Good evening and welcome to the March 20th meeting of the Richmond Water and Sewer Commission on this beautiful sunny blue sky day. And we are just about 20 minutes away from the official arrival of spring. Before we begin, would anybody care to make a public comment? Anyone online? Hearing none, seeing none, moving on. Josh, board, any additions or deletions to tonight's agenda?
Do you think we have enough to keep us busy?
I think we do. Okay, moving on to section 3, items for presentation or discussion with those present. 3A, consideration of approval of an agreement with Hoyle-Tanner and Associates.
David, are you guys muted?
Yes, we are.
Oh,
I can hear you. I can't hear you, but can you hear me? Put your thumbs up if you can hear me. I can't hear you guys at all. Can anybody else hear him?
I can hear you guys. Did you hear me?
yeah.
Hear you. We just
Okay.
unmute.
I
We've
can
been
hear
on.
you.
Okay.
I guess when I said yes, we are, I was looking at your furniture.
No, I muted this. The room is unmuted. So
Okay.
we should be.
Is David's mic off, maybe?
Can
Well,
you-
they can all hear David.
I heard David.
Everybody's
Yeah.
okay.
Huh. Okay,
And Gallicky says we're fine.
okay,
So. I don't know.
okay. Jumping back in, item 3A, consideration of approval of agreement with Hoyle-Tanner and Associates Incorporated for the 20-year wastewater treatment facility evaluation. So this is required engineering evaluation of the plant. Josh, did you want to speak to this while I pull up the memo?
Sure. So you covered that it's required evaluation of the plant to look at the entire plant and provide recommendations and guidance what we need to do going forward. I've invited Jenny Auster from Hoyle-Tanner, who will be the engineer conducting the study. She could probably give us a more concise overview of the process and answer questions from the commission.
Hello, I am Jenny Oster with Hoyle-Tanner. Just a little background on myself. I'm the wastewater treatment technical lead for Hoyle-Tanner. Worked in Vermont for the last 12 years, have over 20 years of experience. I think in the Northeast, I've worked with over 40 wastewater treatment facilities, and in Vermont, I think I'm in the over 24. I would have to sit and count, somewhere between 25 and 30 different facilities I've worked with in Vermont. So as was noted, the 20-year evaluation is required per your permit. It is required to be submitted by December 31st of this year. And as Josh said, it is essentially an assessment of the existing condition of the facility. Once the needs have been identified with that assessment, putting together an array of solutions to address each of those needs, and then identifying a recommended plan. What we do is we structure our 20-year evaluations, those reports, to follow the outline that's required for a preliminary engineering report by the state of Vermont and USDA Rural Development. So we use that outline to guide the 20-year evaluation. So if you were to move into a project that required a preliminary engineering report, your 20-year evaluation would cover the majority of those requirements. The 20-year evaluation covers not just the treatment facility, but also your collection system. You're required to have each of the manholes in your pump station inspected as well. So that's incorporated into the overall scope. The total fee for this work is $154,000. That is in the EJCDC document, which is a very cumbersome, but I'm guessing you've seen before, since both RD and the state of Vermont for Clean Water SRF require agreements in that format. So I'd have to look at the page numbers off the top of my head for where the different pages within that scope of work that identify the fee and within the agreement where the scope is listed. We'd like to open it up to any questions that you have on the report or the process that we'll be going through.
Thank you, Jenny. Any questions from the board? Bart?
I just say, having been to the plant recently, how soon could you start? How soon could you finish?
Infrastructure is that way. Certainly wastewater is a demanding environment that after 20 years, you expect to find needs. So we would look to move into starting the work. It really will take close to the full remaining calendar year to put that together. And we'll approach it really similar to a preliminary engineering study that will have a 30% review meeting, which will cover the assessment portion, so review of the needs. And then the 60% will be, that's where the bulk of the work is identifying what solutions, the array of alternatives for addressing those needs to get from 30 to 60. At 60, we'll work with the town on identifying what makes sense for moving ahead for a recommended project. And then that's the final piece that gets presented at the 90%. And in order to get that in by December 31st per your permit, we do need to get going.
Thank you.
Any other questions from the board? Any questions from the public? Lisa, go ahead.
Yeah, Jenny, is the plant allowed to embark or continue maintenance, replacement maintenance or anything else before or during your evaluation?
Absolutely. So this is really, it's a regulatory and a planning document. So, as needs arise, the operations and the town should address those as they see fit. I think what's anticipated is the anticipated useful life of majority of the equipment, the major equipment within a treatment facility has about a 20-year life. So that's why the DEC puts in the permit that let's look at it around 20 years. So the communities have a planning document to determine how they move forward, but operations and addressing current needs can go on concurrently.
Okay, follow-up question for you. Can you evaluate replacement equipment if you're still doing your survey before, or if that's going in before your survey is finished?
So somewhat within that, that's a little bit out. It depends. We're here to help. I think that's
that
part
sounds
of it.
good.
And it's a balance within, if it's a lot of effort to try to put together replacement equipment, but we're inevitably talking, as we're looking at putting together recommendations, we're going to be reaching out to equipment manufacturers, not at the valve level, but more at the major equipment level. So as we get those proposals and it makes sense for the town to consider moving ahead with those out of the capital budget or whatnot, we'd have that information that can help drive moving that portion of some sort of replacement forward.
Okay, thank you. Just one last one. Do you recommend any, let's say technology has improved, during the last 20 years and so forth. Do you make those kind of recommendations also?
Yes. So inevitably you're going to see, some of the most common places we see it are, for example, blower technology, because that's your largest energy use at any treatment facility. It's often in any community. The energy you put into your wastewater blowers is your largest consumer. So with that kind of drive behind it, the innovation in blowers, it is constantly changing and becoming more energy efficient. So that's an example where certainly as we look at what you have, we'll look at an opportunity to see if there's something that can do better. Similarly for pumps, there's opportunities to look at those to be more efficient, potentially. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Any other questions for Jenny? Morgan?
I don't know if this is the appropriate point. There was discussions about 3 different scenarios for replacing pumps.
Yes.
The next agenda. Okay, so, but I mean, this is
Timely.
right. Plays it. Okay, so I'll hold my question.
Jenny, I think what we're all kind of alluding to is that we have a list of about 5
It's a long
million,
list.
5 million things that need to be replaced urgently before the plant blows up. I'm being facetious, but only a little bit. And I guess we're wondering how chaotic will it be if we're yanking things out as fast as you're recommending we put them in and so forth.
That is at, that becomes at your prerogative, and if we can help guide that, we're happy to do it. If we get, our first step is getting enough information to provide a recommendation that is sound. And so that's a piece of it too. But as we come up with those, and as you can do them out of the capital budget, or as we size up, especially as we move into the 60%, you're going to have a sense of, is this bigger than our capital budget, or is this ones we're going to figure out over the next 5 years? We're going to do this in year 1, this in year 2, this in year 3, and it's something you can figure out from your operations budget.
Thank you, Jenny. Any other questions? Okay, I
Want a
guess I'll just,
motion?
go ahead.
I move to approve entering into an agreement with Hoyle-Tanner and Associates Inc. to perform the 20-year wastewater treatment facility evaluation at a price not to exceed $154,000, and to name town manager Josh Arneson as the duly authorized representative.
Thank you, Jay. Do we have a second?
Morgan, I second the motion.
Motion made by Jay, seconded by Morgan. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
J.I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bard, aye.
And David, aye. Motion is passed unanimously. Thank you, Jenny.
Thank you. Look forward to working with y'all.
I imagine we will have many more conversations soon.
Makes sense.
Moving on, consideration of approval of a purchase of an Influent pump. So there are two pumps at the entrance to the plant, not the physical entrance, but where the stuff that gets treated comes in. One of those two pumps is not working. And that's a pump, I believe, from 1972 that went.
I don't have the exact date on it.
So we need a pump. Did you want to speak to this at all?
Sure. So as we talked about last meeting, this is something we've been aware of for a while now. I can kind of give some background, which might be helpful. When the pump initially failed, we did get some quotes from a pump provider on 3 different options. Not wanting to just jump into buying from the first quote, I actually reached out to Jenny Oster from Hoyle-Tanner, who just spoke in the last agenda item, to get her opinion on what should we be doing here? What's the right pump to buy? How can we help us write an RFP so we can go out and look at more quotes? Sort of simultaneously to that, we were working with Phil Larrabee to see if he could help us figure out. Sorry, wait a minute. Oh, if he could repair the pump. So he had taken the pump to see if he could get it repaired. After looking into it, Jenny needed some more information about why the plant isn't currently operating at its peak flow capacity, and that was going to take more time to look into and dissect than we really had time for with this. So my request to the board, well, Jenny then recommended that we move forward with one of the quotes from Champlin in consultation with Phil, because Phil really understands sort of the operations of our plant, to get an idea of which pump would best serve us right now. And with that, hopefully that once we had the 20-year study in place, that pump may become something that we don't use, but it could at least become a backup.
Yeah.
In further conversations, Steve Cote from Water and Wastewater reached out to Phil, and Phil said, well, actually, I've got a pump here that might work for you guys. And, we have not, I got the information, I think, Thursday, so we don't really have information on if that's a purchase, if that's a sale, if that's a lease, how we would get that from Phil. And he said it would really only last you about a year, which is kind of what we need to get through where we're at right now. We need something to help us get through this situation. Get the 20-year study done, figure out which are the correct size pumps to purchase, and then get those pumps purchased. So I know Phil was on site today. My understanding is he spent most of his time at the pump station. I talked to Steve just before this meeting. He said he's going to jump into the meeting, give us some more updates. I don't know if he had a chance to get a price from Phil on that pump. My goal would be to get that as soon as possible. If he doesn't get it to us today, get it tomorrow. And then I'm asking the board tonight for a not to exceed amount so we can start to move forward with either Phil's solution, or if for some reason that doesn't work out, get a pump from Champlin and get something moving and get it on the ice, and we can get this problem fixed.
Thank you, Josh. Morgan?
So we're talking about an 800 gallon per minute pump. that correct? Because I, you know,
I know two of them were 400 and one of them was 800, but I don't know about this one.
this one I think is 800, because we need something that will pump peak, and 800 gallons is peak, even though we have
Yeah.
cavitation issues.
And we haven't been running it.
Right,
Right.
so there's a couple things, but this sounds like this is a Band-Aid.
It is.
It is, and I might let Jenny and Alan speak to it a little bit more, but if I get my numbers right. What we have in there right now might only be 400. I don't, because we never really run it at peak. So that's part of I think that's part of what Jenny needs more information on is why aren't we running it at peak? Because I think she would normally recommend a larger pump. But we might be able to get away with something lower. Jenny or Alan, would one of you maybe want to clarify that a little bit? I think I got that right, but I want to go to the experts.
Jenny, you were unmuted first, so you're on.
Okay, so, my understanding, and I'm still in the get to know you on your facility, so Alan, correct me where if I misspeak. But from what I understood, you have your facility is designed for two pumps. One each can move the peak flow. The issue is you're not able to run them at run the pumps at that peak because of other issues downstream. So buying the big pump now, what we'd probably recommend is a triplex pump system. So if you're dividing that peak by two, you're going to have smaller pumps overall and still have one redundant out of service, where right now you have two larger pumps because they need to hit that whole range of flow. So it seems like that's likely where we're going to end up is some sort of triplex pump recommendation. And part of that is exactly what you said. If they're running at too low of flows, you're going to have cavitation issues. There's a lot of ragging issues because the velocity isn't high enough through those pumps, so they rag up. So, Alan, did I catch it reasonably well?
Yes.
Jay?
Okay, two things. One, I just want to stress to the public and to the rest of the commission that we all understand this is not a 1-year pump that we will turn into a 10-year pump, which is kind of our past pattern. Second, it has to do with the filter in front of the pump. Given the amount of ragging issues we've had, we don't currently have a filter in front of the pump. Is that something that we can be getting more or less at the same time or approximately as soon as possible?
That is my understanding. Alan, do you know more about when Phil can install that filter or the screen?
I haven't heard back. He was ordering the parts. I haven't heard back if he got it back together yet. So we could do that.
Okay, Morgan?
How often do you have to clean the filter? Alan?
We
don't know.
usually do it every 2 weeks when we do our UV.
Okay.
We've just been running one continually, so.
You guys may not be talking about the same thing. Like you're talking about a screen that would be prior to the influent
That's
pump.
right.
Yes,
Right? We don't currently have one.
so we don't have to
So-
clean it.
So Alan, the question is more about the screen prior to the influent pump. Alan, I think you're talking about the filter at the end of the system that has the parts on. So I think we need more information from Phil on the screen prior to the influent pump and make sure that we get that installed when we install whichever pump we choose to buy.
Right.
And the screen is something that catches things that people should not be flushing down the
Rags and large grit, rocks and
Catches things that destroys pumps.
Right.
Right.
Colors.
Steve made reference when we got the tour to sometimes fist-sized rocks trying to go through the pump. And I don't think it's good for it.
It sounds like storm water.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, I think it's a great idea that we move ASAP.
To include the screen.
Absolutely.
Does anyone, since we have to make a not to exceed number, does anyone have a proposal of what a screen would cost so we can add that to some of these quotes we have? Right?
Don't know what the screen would cost. The one caveat I could make on that is if you make a not to exceed for the pump, the screen is most likely not going to be $10,000 and can be within my purchasing
Okay,
powers.
Okay.
So as long as that's $2,000, I'll buy the screen as well as the recommended pump.
Okay.
And we won't need to come back to the commission.
Okay.
The reason for this is to make sure that anything over 10,000, I need commission approval for.
Morgan?
I have one other question. These are variable frequency drive motors, but even with that capability, you still have cavitation at lower volume. Maybe that's a Jenny question.
That's what it appears there's evidence of, and this is going from the reports on taking a look at the pumps, is that the impellers look like there was evidence of it. So whether that was, it's hard to say, other than it appears that it has happened, from what I understood from when they've taken apart the pumps.
The variable frequency drives, normally I know they're there to save energy, but normally they would also reduce cavitation as well, wouldn't they?
They should allow a greater range of operation within the hitting those lower flows without creating the cavitation issues within the pump. But something's going on. So, I don't know if this may be where Phil has a better idea since he's taken apart those, or Alan, but it appears that would be, the intent would be for those VFDs to operate over the range, but it appears the reality is that hasn't been the case.
Thank you.
We're talking about influent pumps and cavitation.
Why don't you guys?
Come on up.
Join us at the table.
You're part of the family.
So we're discussing the purchase of a new influent pump. And there were questions about, should we install a screen on the new pump, and cavitation issues, size of the pump, cost to run the pump, efficiency of the pump. And then you guys walked in.
Good timing. Well, we've just been talking about that.
You must be Phil.
I'm Phil. Nice to meet you.
The men of the hour, to be sure.
So tell us all about influent pumps.
You need a couple.
So we need one now, but we need two.
Right. You're down to one. It was repaired by me a couple of years ago as a Band-Aid fix the last 6 months.
You did well.
I've impressed myself, but that is the only functional pump you have right now.
So there's zero redundancy.
Zero.
And the other pumps, are they?
Pump.
There's two total.
But
Yes.
one that's not working is past its useful life.
It is in about 100 pieces in my shop right now.
Okay.
It is beyond repair.
Of the three, we have a couple of different quotes. Do you have any idea of like what ones we could get here the fastest so that we would be in redundancy again?
Well, I don't think Phil's seen all those quotes. He saw
Okay.
one.
Alan sent me the three. I haven't really
Oh,
spent
okay.
much time looking at them to
There was
to
one
really
seemed like a
pick them,
clear winner. Yeah.
Yeah.
pick them apart.
He might have an option. Might, I said.
I have a emergency Band-Aid. Obviously, you're going into spring. I have a pump in my shop that is too big for your application. That could be slowed down with your existing equipment. That could get you by until you can get a pump in. Obviously, springtime at a wastewater plant it's high stress for these guys. The flow that comes in during thaws typically is excessive. So it could get you through a hard spot in an emergency. It's used. It's something I pulled out of a different community who has a very progressive or aggressive, I should say, replacement plan. It has some life left in it to the point where I didn't feel real good at just scrapping it. It has some use to someone, and it just could be somebody in an emergency that,
Mhm.
needs it. So that it might,
it could fit into your application to get you through.
This pump is bigger than what we need, but it would certainly handle what we need it for until we have a planned replacement of the two pumps, one of which already died.
Right, but I wouldn't want this to slow down
That
your work
process.
going toward the proper pump, because this is not the proper pump. It probably,
Band-Aid.
this is something that, yeah, it's
Instead
certainly.
of guessing what we're gonna need and purchasing a pump and putting it in and then hoping that would line up with the 20-year plan, you're proposing using this pump as a temporary pump.
Right, and we understood this pump would be good for at most a year, maybe. That we should not plan on using it longer than that. We should have our
No.
solution in place.
I would, yeah, I'd use it as a stopgap until you get whatever pump.
You have a price yet? Or?
The price of the pump is it's scrap to me.
Oh,
So it's something that I would just, hear. But
That's a
it's
good
gonna
price.
need to be, well, and it's
Can we
gonna need to be
negotiate that?
installed, and you're gonna need to have piping modifications to
Yeah.
do it.
Because it won't just plug in,
Right. It's not, so there's gonna be some cost,
but that's
To-
labor
to
and
make it-
materials.
To
labor
fit,
and
right.
materials. But the pump, I'll give you the pump, because to me, it almost went to the scrapyard a month ago.
can we sell it back to you?
Yes, exactly what I sell it to you. So I want to comment here, and this is something that I'm finding when I'm reaching out to people like Phil in the business to get stuff. Our town has a really bad reputation of band-aiding stuff. And I'm trying to make it sure that the people in the know now realize that we are not trying to band-aid stuff. We are trying to make things right here in Richmond. So I don't think Phil would make an offer. I mean, he has repaired the two Influent pumps and told Kendall or whoever was in charge at the time, those are Band-Aid fixes. This was 2 years ago. He's not looking for us to put this pump in and be a Band-Aid 5 years down the road that we're not addressing. And that's something that I'm trying to address with all the people I deal with now. We're trying to do it right.
So this will get us back to where we were a couple months ago.
But for a limited amount of time, we cannot treat this as a long time Band-Aid.
Right.
This is a stopgap, like the spare tires they have in cars sometimes, you would know this, the little tires. They're not meant to be used permanently.
This is a used little tire.
So,
Go ahead.
so we're doing this 20-year study. Can we do the influent pump part of it first with Jenny so that we can order what we need? Is that how these things, I don't know how these things work. I'm new here. But could we do the part with the influent pump, like use your pump as a Band-Aid, but you're saying that a year is probably too long and you're talking about the study taking until the end of the calendar year. And then we would have to order something, which leads me to believe it would probably be a full year till if we waited and went with the study timeline. Could we study these influent pumps sooner so that we could get one ordered in June and have it here not a year from now? I don't even know if that's a
I
reason.
don't know how that.
We have the engineer.
No, I don't know how their study works.
Yeah, she's,
Jenny?
So the answer to that is because those pumps are hydraulically impact the whole facility. We need to, that's where initially I paused on, we need to understand the whole facility. So in order to get the pumps that are the right size for going in there. That said, I very much appreciate the urgency on this. And as soon as we get a reasonable design criteria identified for those pumps, we'll put that together and make that a priority for identifying what the recommended alternative is. And if that moves out of sync with the overall recommendations, that's totally fine. And we will work to prioritize that. Thinking about timing, we're end of March. It's probably a best case scenario, a couple months to get all of the information together and understand what's going on at the facility and get the design criteria. So I just want to set the expectation that it's probably is more like mid to end of summer before I feel like maybe we can do better. We're kind of dependent on other things, but I don't want to rush a decision versus go through and feel like we are making an informed decision. So, or recommendation, so.
Thank you, Jenny. Bard?
I just want to avoid painting the town of Richmond with the broad brush here. Like the town of Richmond is weak. We're here in the Water Sewer Commission.
Yes.
As a member of both the Water Sewer Commission and Select Board, we have been heavily reliant on department heads. I'm reluctant to have a personal opinion about what pumps should be in here. Like, I don't have an opinion about what tires should go on the fire truck or what plow we should buy to plow a road. That's why we have department heads. So I just want to sort of be cautious about our role in our lane here, which is to support the decisions and say, what do we need to do? Figure out if that makes sense and how to pay for it.
Okay, so I just wanted to add I have a statement and a question. I think we were kind of at this point restating ourselves over and over. We want to get this placeholder pump from Phil as soon as we possibly can, pay and for the installation, whatever is reasonable, and then move with all due dispatch to get a permanent pump. And that's kind of what the motion does not state to buy the pump or get the pump from Phil, but we need
spending up to.
it would be a not to exceed, so we could just do that. The question I have is, can we get the parts for the one that's all over your shop? Radiate Design and Art Space downstairs in the basement. Might want to mix some art out of that.
You can have every piece of it.
Thanks.
When you put in this pump, can we put in the filter thing,
The
the
screen?
screen as well?
We talked a little about that. That's something that is really more of a 20-year upgrade that needs,
Okay.
because that should be looked at by somebody way smarter than me.
Okay.
Lisa?
Oh, thank you. I just want to throw my thought in, if there's any piping modifications that need to be done on the suction side of this pump or any of the pumps, it seems like a really opportune time to put a strainer in there too. It's just an addition to the piping. It could be designed in spool pieces made up ahead of time, just almost plug it in. I'd look to Jenny for maybe a yes or no on that, but might be something to think about. It's downtime that we don't have to take if we do it at the same time as the pump work. And it's really important to increase the longevity of your pumps and downstream equipment, I think. Thank you.
So Jenny, the question is off the shelf pre-screen for this Influent pump. Can we do that now with the temporary pump or should we not?
I'm going to lean a bit on Phil because he's been there, but I think what we're talking about is is true influent screening versus something that's on an intake pipe, because that's likely to get clogged up anyway and get ragged up just the same as anything else. So I think the piping fix will create a maintenance issue. It would be my hunch, and I'll toss that to Phil too. I think looking at influent screening, which right now is downstream of your influent pumps, and there are reasons for that. You have a very, very deep influent sewer that complicates putting in screening. So you need to be a very deep screen to get to that. You also regularly surcharge back up the collection system, not through the pipe. So there's some hydraulic considerations that make it a bit more challenging on the influent screening as well as the depth. So it's not unfortunately a easy-ish fix to have screening ahead of those influent pumps, in my opinion.
Thank you.
Okay.
Bard?
I think if we just if I can call the question and
Please.
move the motion. So it's moved and seconded, was it not?
No, we haven't moved it at all yet.
So move to approve the use of up to $33,780.88 in the wastewater capital reserve to replace the influent.
Second.
So motion made by Bard, seconded by Jay. Any further discussion?
This one says 35.
Third pump.
Do we have to go that way?
So while we're figuring this out, Steve and Phil, thanks you for the Perry Mason last minute rushing into the courtroom with new
Well, I
information.
think that's
sorry
the
about that.
subtotal.
No,
but
thank
the total with tax is 35.
I will apologize. Bill was doing a walkthrough with the plant with me.
Then yeah.
And he made the
Okay.
mistake of saying, well, call me if you need any backup.
Okay,
Yeah, I took it-
And he called me on it.
that right, they'll waive the sales tax, so we're good.
yeah, I took the tax out because we won't pay that. And they
That's
said
right,
in their
yes,
letter,
okay.
they just,
They
Okay,
just need the
Okay.
documentation.
they turn it around as fast as they could, and they would need our documentation to take the tax out, but we would get them that, so.
so the figure in the motion of $33,780.88 is good.
I second the motion.
I already
A
did.
motion made by Jay, seconded by Aaron.
We're
Any
really
further
eager on
discussions?
J.I.,
Calling the motion to a vote, please identify yourself and signify your vote.
J.I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bart, I.
And David, I. And sincerely, guys, thanks for coming in with this. This is helpful.
Can you have it in by tomorrow?
No.
I'm kidding.
Just to be, I just want to make sure we're clear. So we're gonna try to use Phil's pump, get that plumbed in. We're not gonna buy a pump from Champlain. We're gonna do the 20-year study in hopefully a couple of months. As soon as she can get it, we'll then have recommendation, go out to bid and get the proper pump.
But if that pump doesn't work
Then
before
we
the
have-
next
yep.
meeting, you have the authorization
Yeah.
to spend up to that amount.
Okay,
to Purchase. the
very
pump.
clear. Thank you.
Before we move to the next item, I just wanted to mention on behalf of Aaron and myself that because we know this meeting is 2 hours long and some of us on the select board probably will be here till dawn. Aaron and I brought in dinner, which you guys are certainly welcome to. There's meatballs and sauce, and then there's homemade sourdough bread, which I made today, and there's homemade chocolate meringue pie, which I made today. And this is a good time to, if you want to get some, because our next item could conceivably be lengthy.
So as you're eating, I just want to point out, since this meeting began, spring has sprung.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah,
So please eat.
Mhm.
thank you.
Moving on. So we've done the pump. Review of list of water and wastewater items to be repaired or
Thank you, Phil.
replaced. There was a list in the packet. Included in the packet is a list of items that are known to need replacement or repair as of now. Phil Laramie, who we just met, will conduct a walkthrough of the facility on Monday, March 20th. That was today. And will provide an updated list.
So he's gonna update the list of his.
Well,
contacts.
I think Phil was leaving because he really does need to get home. But a number one on his list was definitely the influent pumps. That needs to be addressed, has to be addressed. If for any reason a state official ended up coming into our plant right now, we're in violation.
Because we've lost the redundancy.
Yes.
Well, that's all we're in violation of the air handling system.
Well, yeah, so, but, so one of the other things that Phil thought that needed to be addressed is and I nor had taken it into consideration. The wet well is filling up with solids.
That's the septic receiving,
No, that's where all of the town
Oh.
solid come in.
but the steps go down into
Yeah.
that big tank.
It's slowly filling up with solids. It was cleaned in October. He was mortified at the number of solids that had deposited in there.
That typically gets cleaned how often?
I had cleaned it in April when I started and I had cleaned it, but he feels that it's the influent pumps are not properly working.
Pumps.
So, yeah, the one, so that should be, it should be able to fill up. But it should also pump out all of the solids and everything that's there. So that's not happening because our pump is weak and it's not keeping up. And then when it does back up, it's not pumping quick enough to settle down. So.
So it'd almost be analogous to pumping a private septic tank. You get the solids building up in the bottom.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So he feels that we really need to start by cleaning that out, and he's given me a process. Don't do it all in one day. You're gonna kill the plant. And don't do it until you have another backup pump. But he thinks we need to start there.
Procedural question, can we pump that up and then just move the truck 100 feet and dump it into our, no, okay, that looks good.
So on June of June 6th of 2022. Phil gave Kendall an estimate to fix that Headworks building, the screen that's in there. He gave Kendall an estimate of $126,000 for parts and labor alone to fix that one unit. His suggestion is get your 20-year study done as soon as you can. It needs to be replaced. It can't be.
Can't be fixed.
It can if
Shouldn't
you,
be
I mean, you're gonna wanna weigh the price of a new one to $126,000 for one that's been there for so long.
And that it's really old technology is my understanding when we talked about that last.
It's not old technology. There are a lot of plants out there, but there is enough problems with it that it needs to be upgraded. I mean, it should definitely, he feels that it's not a desperate thing, but desperately needs to be replaced in the 20-year upgrade. We had the discussion with him over cleaning all the solids out of the tanks. Every tank is supposed to be cleaned once a year and inspected for cracks, leaks, everything, and that is something that's supposed to be done.
These are the tanks where the fish live.
Well, those tanks, any of the tanks, the digester, the tanks under the building,
Thanks, the septic comes into.
Yep. all of those are supposed to be cleaned once a year. I have been there almost a year now, and Brad's been there longer. He can't remember when the tanks were cleaned. So that's something that we desperately need to do, and he says getting all the cleaning done will get solids out of the plant, get it back. We've had a long discussion with Phil over operation of the plant. He feels that the operation of the plant is 1990 vintage operation. And it needs, I mean, the technology and things that we were talking about that we use on a daily basis to operate the plant, Phil doesn't even understand them because they were technology and things that stopped being used before he became a water operator in 2000. So there's some modernization there that needs to come up.
Is our telegraph still working and our fax machine?
Yes. I took 3 fax machines to the recycle when I started.
What are we gonna do for communication?
Yeah, I don't know.
Signal.
No signal.
The filters, the backwash pump that he's rebuilding, and we have one ordered. He was on board for rebuilding the other one when we get done. That way we have 2 operational pumps and another one that's been rebuilt and ready to go into place at any breakdown. There was also the discussion about our UV lights. So the intensity thing on the UV lights has not worked since I've been there. Brad takes an E. coli sample of our effluent twice a month and takes it into Endyne. At that time, he's being instructed to state that there is a UV intensity. Phil has told us that jeopardizes our licenses and that we should no longer do that. The proper thing to do is to put UV intensity meter is broke and leave it at that. But he says, once you do that, there is going to be a short term, and then the state's going to look and see, oh, you've sent in this many samples and your UV intensity is not fixed. So be aware, if we start to do that, somebody from the state's going to come a calling.
That's right. Well,
And how long has that been down?
since it was installed? That's what you.
Well, I do not know. It hasn't worked since I've been there.
Okay.
Brad can't remember when it worked, but
3 years ago,
And it was installed, like when?
that was in the original upgrade,
2004.
so 2004 or something.
Fine.
I'm going to observe sort of our swim lanes again. since there's only two of us that are certified licensed professionals in this room. The rest of this, it's really a compelling story, but where I'm going, it's sort of like my car. I rely on a mechanic and I find an honest mechanic to tell me you got to do this, this, this. And he explains it to me, and most of the times I understand, but it's like, you got to do what you got to do. So it seems to me we have to prioritize those things that could become fatal errors in the processing, like if this breaks, the treatment stops.
Or if this breaks, the state shuts us down.
And there are some of those where we have to include like, okay, that somebody pulls the plug. I would say also related to this, there are things that may be life safety for staff that we have to prioritize those. And then I'm going to call the question of, you know, we've talked about septic receipts and impacts intermittently through my entire time on this commission. I think we may come to a point where we have to contemplate slowing down, stopping. Septic is a nice to have, not got to have. The customers who are hooked up to the plant need it to work. Septic haulers, while it represents a source of revenue, those of you who have paid attention to this commission know there have been ongoing questions about what the actual cost of treating septic is. And if you go there and you see the things that are introduced from septic, like grit and rocks, it's not clear to me what the charge should be based on not just chemicals and flow, but the actual impact on the system. Another thing I would say regarding septic, since we now are reliant on the truck operators to tell us how many gallons they dropped off, it is very clear to me that that is not an acceptable business practice. How many gallons did you give me? That we should, in my opinion, if we're going to continue to take septic, we need to prioritize a meter that knows, that can tell us how much we are getting from an individual hauler, as opposed to the, you know, drop box if you're selling eggs or something.
Right. And right now they could fill the tank and that tells us nothing because we don't know exactly how much the tank is full of.
Yeah, I mean, we have a gauge in the tank that, a probe that measures the depth, but it is not, they're not accurate to it. I mean, they tell us when the tank is full. I mean.
Right. And since you don't know if the tank is 20% clogged or 23%
Well,
clogged.
yeah.
The other thing is we've got a lot of alarms. You showed me the panel.
Yeah.
Half the lights are red because they're turned off.
So
I know some of those are turned, they're not there because we just don't have those systems or something, but the ones that would be going off constantly if they were turned on, I don't feel good, especially like the air quality in that one building, which is actually beyond safe levels.
So I will scare you with a few things. I called around to a couple of their treatment plants and found out who they use for air handlers and stuff. And Avonda Air came up as everybody said, call them. I called them, had them come out to fix the dewatering plant the way it should be, and he would not even enter the plant because he's like, the ammonia in there, I'm not, there's no way. I mean,
Not safe, it's beyond. safe.
right.
I didn't either.
$250,000.
The aeration system?
No, that's just the air handling, to handle it properly. And he thought that because we use natural gas to, he said it's on the cheaper side because we use natural gas for heat. A lot of the other facilities that he's handling, they actually are making their own methane for heat. And it's a dirtier substance for him to put. So he was like, yeah, it's $250,000.
Is that air handling in that one
Building. I was totally mortified.
Can we go back? I'm sorry, can we go back to the septic? I mean, it's like fire hose with the holes in it here, putting the fire out. I guess maybe we should we stop discussing septic until we, one, get the solids at a right level in that one tank.
Yeah, we have to take some steps.
We need to take some septage to make the process of the plant work.
Okay.
We were told when Kendall resigned, when he left us kind of an overview of what we should do and how we should operate the plant, and as easy as this, knowing the experience he was leaving the plant in. He told us to take no more than 20,000 gallons a day of septic.
And that's one of those two tanks, right? The two tanks total were 40.
Yeah. And we were doing that. We were routinely taking like 17,000 a day. And then towards the beginning of December, we immediately started taking as much as we could take again.
We definitely, Josh has already started a schedule for what days we won't take septage in order to fix the auger and to fix that one motor, right? You needed 8 hours to do the one motor,
The pump,
the pump.
yeah, that's
Need about 2 days.
minor. We can. It's, we can take septage when I do that. It's just,
You can't
I mean, we
process.
have 40,000 gallons of space before that pump.
Mhm.
So we can take 2 days of 20,000.
Okay,
We don't have to shut everybody off, but we have to not be able to pump it
Mhm.
because the pump physically has to come all apart.
right. And so in our memo or in our notes, Josh, that you sent out, you've worked with Brad and Steve and Alan to work out a schedule for that maintenance, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I'm just gonna observe, absent a meter, we're not entirely sure the exact gallons we're getting.
No.
So-
We know when we get 20,000 because the tank is
It's
full.
Well, give or take.
Yeah,
More or less.
because I'll tell you, they do not go all the way to zero right now on their thing because we know there's a certain amount of solids underneath it. So, yeah. I just relayed to you guys that other plants who have put in meters have increased their revenue
Huh.
without increasing their prices.
Because they'll be able to act more accurately charge.
Correct.
So David, it just seems clear to me that there could be two reasons why haulers would choose to come to Richmond. A combination of a low rate and a honesty system for an estimated number of gallons. So I think this is not the highest priority item, but I think we should contemplate what we are gonna do with septage. And I think we should contemplate raising the rate again, given some of the stories we've heard. It's, I mean, one of my suspicions is that our rate is not covering all these associated costs of running the plant.
So, Phil, we had a little discussion about septage rates. Phil still run, well, I don't know if he's officially running Newport treatment plant. He said they were what, 18? Yeah.
How much?
15 to 8, they just went to 18 cents.
And what are we?
Seven. I agree with Bard, and I think we should raise our rate.
And I know that Middlebury is in the 18 to 19 cent range.
So
I don't know, you did the last study. Yeah, so that, everybody I talk to tells us or that Richmond cannot be making any money at the price we're charging for septage. Cannot.
Kara?
This is great.
Since, Bard, since you're talking about potentially it almost sounds like putting a moratorium on accepting septage. Is there a minimum, because they talk about the maximum per day? And you needed to have, Jay mentioned needing to have a certain quantity of septage to allow the plant to process how it needs to process. What is the minimum gallons of septage per day that you need? And can you put a moratorium on anything above that until you get your plant up to processing level and you get a better understanding of what your septic expenses are so that you can, I mean, make a profit off of it? Is there a minimum?
I mean, I think it's in, I think it's in the 15 to 20,000 gallons a day to make the processes work right. It's a benefit to processing our sludge that we produce with the septage. But 100,000 gallons a day is not needed.
Okay.
And Bart, can I, and I'm sorry, David, can I just put one more point forward? It would be that when you evaluated the rates the last time, the question was posed then, what does it cost you to process septage? And I did believe back then you were too low a rate, and I still am happy that you're actually going to look at this, because I believed back then that your current users on the system were subsidizing people that were bringing in septage not on your system. So I do encourage you to, 1, increase your rates, 2, drop down to a very minimum of processing for right now while you get your plant up and running, and really have an understanding of what your septage costs you.
So,
I'm very thankful to the Water and Sewer Department for bringing these issues forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. Bart?
maybe we can return to the septage rate issue at our next meeting, because it's not on the agenda. But
Yeah.
I think if we warn it, and perhaps then contemplate a question of minimums, maximums.
Yeah, by then we'll have more information on estimates on what we expect it's costing us to process, minimum, maximum flows, capacities, et cetera. Information that we don't have in front of us tonight. Also, neighboring towns survey of what the rates are.
I think
Mean to cut you off.
we have that information, don't we? Or you think it needs to be updated? Okay, because he did it in when? Yeah,
We have some numbers from December.
yeah, those
But-
were the ones.
Yeah.
Those are the newest ones.
I'd say that's probably already outdated.
Yeah.
He's just said Montpelier raised theirs.
Well,
I'm pretty sure.
I think my player did actually.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Liam, you hungry? You hungry? Because we got all this stuff, somebody's got to eat it.
Anything else on reviewing of items to be repaired or replaced?
I just want to go back to what Bart said at the very beginning to make sure that we made note of that, because he listed a set of priority criteria.
Yeah.
That I think were pretty good. Would you mind repeating those if you?
Those things, I think the first is those. I'm not gonna put them first, second, third, but all three. Those things which present a risk of life, safety, or health to staff. You did the top. Those things that if they fail. And without redundancy represent a fatal error to the system, like it will not, in a coding, it would now not work at all, right? Fatal error. And the third is that leads to pulling the plug on the license. It's a license or operational violation, which is sort of a third red
Right.
flashing. There might be more.
Morgan?
Can I add to the third one that we're transparent, even if we get in trouble with the state?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I believe as a group down there, we want to do our best for the town, no matter what. We're just in the position of not being able to even function because we're in crisis mode every minute of every day, not knowing how bad it's going to get.
And Phil was up at the pump today, but he's coming to the plant tomorrow. Is that right? Or
No, so the pump is now back operational. We have the pump station on the far side of the bridge. We have 2 pumps that are now operational and have been fixed. He said he has the estimate. He didn't have it with him to repair the rest of the pump station, the replumbing and the new foot valves that desperately need to be. There was about 6 inches of water in the bottom of it.
But has he gone through the treatment plant proper?
He did a quick, what,
I mean, we were there for.
hour?
Yeah.
I mean, he didn't get through the whole thing because we wanted to come over here. But he did a pretty good walkthrough.
But somebody's
was
trying
that
to
the
steal your
result?
purse.
So just some of the things I'm working through. We now have 50% of a staircase.
How many pallets is that?
Huh?
How many pallets is that?
No, there's no pallets involved. They're all gone. There's been some construction done. We'll get the rest of that. Should be done this week.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I saw
Uh,
Home Depot yesterday. I almost picked up stingers.
No, I tell you, it's irritated me from day one.
I'd just like to say, while the public's listening, I'm so glad that you guys did ultimately get through to us because we have all had an education this week. I mean, some of us knew more than others, but the tours we got in the past, we were basically getting told, oh, this runs on hamsters. And we're going, cool. Like the whole thing about the fish in the tank being a proof that the water is being treated cleanly. It's like, no, that tank isn't working. That's why they're fish in there. So thank you for the honesty.
So, I got an estimate from Limoges overhead doors. They're gonna, they came out, they looked at it to put remote door openers on the dewatering plant, so you don't have to enter. He'll have an exact estimate, but it's less than $500.
Good.
You have to install them,
Huh?
and then you can install them
That's installed.
or, oh,
I mean, he said it would probably be in the $400 range. But I said, just give me a ballpark, and he said, you call tomorrow, I'll have a written estimate, but. So then we wouldn't have to enter dewatering without the overhead doors open. I called the air system, we have the stairs. Pump is fixed, the pump station is fixed now and operational, both pumps. But they still need to be up, there's still more that needs to be done in there. Phil did take a pretty good look while he was here in the pump station. He believes the pump station is good. It's been rehabbed. It's been taken care of. It's just had a lot of neglect over the last 5 years. He thinks once we get the check valves installed and the replumbing done, that the pump station is pretty functional for you and is in pretty good shape. I
This
thought
is
that
the one
was-
you were working on today on the far
Yes.
side of the bridge.
Yep. He was pretty happy with the condition of it. He said the compressors, it really, it's not a pump station that you think of. It works on compressed air. The air compressors are only about 5 years old. The motors tested out good today. We ran a whole bunch of tests and stuff. We found out that the new float switches that he had installed, the one and it was working and then didn't work, was a result that it was a little different and had to have some fine tuning done in the adjustment because it was a little shorter than the old one. And once that was figured out, he plumbed in the new one on. So both pump stations are operational right now. We're operating on the good one. The one with the leaky check valve is shut off right now. But we do have the option of using it if we need it until he gets there. One of the things that blew both Brad's mind and my mind was on Phil's cell phone, he could actually access and show us everything taking place in the Newport plant in real time. Water and sewer, right on his cell phone. He could tell you how much is being pumped, where it's being pumped, when it's being pumped, between anything. And he's like, this is the system for alarms and stuff that you, so that it really blew my mind that it was that. We're still relying on a dialer calling out on cell service, but That's an improvement over what we did have. But what Phil showed us, and granted, we're not Newport, but he said it's economical and it's really, in this day and age, you can't leave a plant unattended at all. And that is happening.
Maybe that's I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Maybe that's something that Jenny would include in their. report.
And their
Well,
study.
I think that is something
Yeah.
that would be included in a 20-year upgrade, that they need to look at all that stuff. It was unbelievable the amount of control he could have and the amount of information he could have. He has more information on his cell phone than we have looking at our computer in the plant.
Do we need to make any more motions to let you spend money? Or authorize, sorry, you to spend money between now and our next meeting if they come back with like, we need this for the UV lights or. You know, to do the
So this would
septic
be
meter, like,
things
is there,
over $10,000 that would be emergent? Anything else you would
Right.
be able to authorize? So I guess the question is, are there any big ticket items that you foresee needing money for in the next few weeks?
I believe the backwash pump is ordered. The repaired one, Phil is getting it repaired for us. That would bring our filter system back on to redundancy and everything. No, the influent pump, if Phil's gonna give you a pump and just get it in play, I mean, Phil really was mortified. You haven't had even, your new pump isn't here. I mean, he's like, you can't
He
do that.
He just gave it to us.
Yeah, we all kind of had the same, oh my God. I mean, how many times did I say, oh my God, during the?
Yeah, I know, too many.
I was just going to observe if we needed to, we have at times in the past, either this group or the select board met very briefly in a session to approve
okay,
an emergent
Thing.
budget item. So if something came up that we needed to respond to, we could do it in a brief focused meeting with a couple of days notice.
24 hours or is
Yeah.
it 48 hours?
24 for a special meeting, so we can
Okay.
turn around pretty quick.
I mean, really, I
I
believe,
just wanted to make sure we were doing. what
no,
we needed to.
I believe, right, the biggest thing is the influent pumps.
Mhm.
Get us at least one that will work. And let the one that's been working nonstop for 8 weeks have a break, because that was supposed to be your backup pump.
My last question is when you showed us the tanks where the fish were and were not, is there progress on how to fix that so that you can use both
Right, the
of
valves,
those?
yeah.
the
We had a
valves?
discussion with Phil, and Phil was of the same agreement. Drain the fish tank. Because you're not using it now. Drain the fish tank. Clean it, fix the valve. Get that one all good. Switch over. And then you can drain the other one as you need to. And then once it's down, you clean it.
Okay.
Because it also needs to be cleaned and inspected.
So when that gets drained, can the fish be rehomed?
Somebody wants to come get them.
Kara?
I just want to make sure, like Aaron, that I'm hearing correctly. So Steve and the water and sewer department are okay to move forward with the repairs on the list that was presented to you guys tonight. Anything below the value of $10,000 to move forward with it, from the garage doors to anything on the list under 10,000. While he gets estimates on anything potentially over that, to have you guys approve at your next meeting, but he's to go ahead with repairing as much as he can on this list. Is that what I'm hearing from you all?
I think
Correct.
so, yes.
Beautiful. I just wanted to make sure that that's exactly what, there's no other motions that need to be made. He's just going for it. Great, good job. Thank you.
Thank you, Kara. Heidi?
Two things. First of all, Limoges, we use them all the time at the shop. They're phenomenal. And highly recommend them.
That's where they were when we came.
I mean, honestly, we use them all the
Yeah.
time. So, and you're gonna get the best bang for the buck. I mean, you know, I'm gonna shop around. So the other question I have for you is the Influent pumps. What is the timeline on that? When are we expecting to get those, that one?
Well, they were having that discussion when I kind of got here tonight and
Okay.
Phil came in with us. Phil has an Influent pump that he could put in place.
Mhm.
I believe he said he would give the pump to us.
That's what I heard.
Right, but
What I heard.
You work it, Steven, you work it.
He's just
Come on,
so,
Brad, you're behind, you're doing it.
but he's just mortified that we don't have one.
Oh, yeah.
He will put it in place. It's gonna cost a little bit to plumb it. But then we will, and it works with the controllers that we have now and everything.
It's not a direct bolt in, so there will be
Yeah.
some plumbing to get it to
Yeah,
work. It's
but not
actually
that much.
two
He actually
what
took
we
some
need.
measurements today.
Okay, so time
And then
on that.
the timeline for the other one is that we're doing, and we had talked about this a little
I'm so
before too,
sorry.
it's totally fine. So the 20-year study is happening, which they have to complete by the end of the year. So they're going to study those a little bit sooner in the 20-year study, so then we can get the right one for our system ordered instead of, well, the right two for our system ordered,
Right.
instead of waiting until the very end of the study.
So are we talking 6 months?
Hopefully the middle, the summer-ish is what they said.
Okay,
For the,
Right.
for the
For the-
plan and replacement.
Yeah.
But the loaner pump is being, that's in motion.
Yeah,
so no later than probably October. We have a deadline.
yeah.
Hopefully.
Wanted to make sure.
Any other questions on the priority list? Well, again, thank you for coming in. Please help yourself
Yeah,
to
I will.
food.
if I do say so myself, the pie was really good.
Your cake was really good,
Yeah.
so I'm sure the pie was. And I just want to thank you guys for all coming down and taking a tour.
Well, thank you
Eh,
for having
it-
us.
I know from myself, it made me feel like you guys really do care. And that you really want the best for Richmond, and we have not been led to believe that in the past.
And I sincerely appreciate you reaching out to us. I don't want you to ever think that we don't want to hear it, or we shouldn't hear it, or we didn't know,
Yeah.
what we were
Right.
told doesn't line up with what we're now seeing.
Yeah.
I apologize for that. I don't have any excuses. I don't have any answers. It was what it was, but we do appreciate you bringing us to our attention. We'd rather know what we don't want to know than assume everything's fine.
And yeah, and like I said, it just came to the point where I was ready to seek other employment.
Yeah, we don't want that.
We're glad that you did
And
it.
my wife said either you go tell them everything or you quit, because,
Always a strong woman in the.
yeah, yeah,
So I'm the slacker in the group. It's a good day to.
any day, we
Any
take,
day.
yep, if you come towards the end of the week, maybe the stairs will be done.
Oh, OSHA, I love that.
One
right?
step at a time.
Show
But
up.
those stairs are there.
Boom.
I think we should show the public what they looked like beforehand, but right now we'll just not do that.
No.
So, okay. thank you.
It was really, that irritated me every time I
I
watched.
can't, when I saw that, I'm like, you've got to ship.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went right to the home spy and I was like, price out stairs that go to here, Scott, now.
So it was,
Thank you.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yep.
Kara?
That's Angela.
Oh, I'm sorry, Angela.
They look alike.
Yeah.
I have a quick question for Josh. Do you have the previous 20-year study? I'm assuming that was done in 2003.
I don't, but I'll look for it.
It must be-
I'm just curious if anyway, if that document exists, if we've got that to reference, that would have kind of been like a blueprint on what should have been happening over the last 20 years. And I'll be curious what Tanner and Hoyle comes up with when they're done their 20-year. And secondly, who was the consultant that did that 20 years, that previous 20-year?
I would assume probably none of us were around then.
So
No.
This is part that study, it's possible it's somewhere at the plant. looking at the boxes.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm
thank
sure
you.
it's at the plant. I believe it was, I'm not, don't hold me to it, but I believe it was done by Green Mountain Engineering.
Who doesn't
Really?
exist
Sounds about
anymore.
right.
Okay.
Okay,
I won't
Thank you.
swear.
That is a
Okay.
good suggestion as a blueprint, though.
Yeah,
yeah,
Oh, and just to pull in for next meeting, the records retention stuff, as you're digitizing stuff, maybe we can get that old one digitized and immortalized. Anyway, throwing it out there.
yeah, that would make sense when
I-
we touch things to drop them in the scanner and inventory it digitally.
I think that's great for a lot of things, but a lot of the. Like the blueprints and stuff, I think you really need to hold on to.
Oh,
them.
yeah.
Because we ran into this issue up at the school. They had theirs all digitized and somebody lost the CD and they had thrown away all of the,
this will be in the cloud,
well, they.
but yeah,
theirs was-
Wherever that is.
it's just north of Toledo.
Okay.
But yeah, there's some things you just keep anyway.
Yeah.
For one thing, it's sometimes easy. I mean, you're looking at a blueprint on a screen this big, not always the easiest thing to read.
When we spend this much to acquire the information, I want to make sure we keep it.
Mhm.
Moving on, review of sanitary survey letter. You want to lead this, Josh?
So this is the, every couple of years, the state comes in and does what they call a sanitary survey, go through the water system to see how it's operating and make suggestions and needed changes. So we got the letter from the state. There were 5 items on the letter that need to be addressed. And I believe they're in the process or have already addressed most of these. First item is the sampling locations. We'll talk about this a little bit later in the meeting, but we've been taking most of our samples for water quality at the tap at the wastewater treatment facility, and they would like to see that sampling location change to just after the water is pumped, treated with chemicals, goes through the chlorine contact time, sample it there before it gets into the system. This is where the proper location is for sampling, and we should have been doing this for years, but we have not been. So you'll see when we talk about it later, we corrected that the day that the state came, we started taking those samples from the proper location. As noted in the previous agenda item, well, we didn't get to that part on the agenda item, but they talked about tanks for the air filters on the tank, screens for the air intake on the water tank need to be changed and replaced. So we've got those on order and those are coming and we'll get those changed as soon as they get here. We also need to increase the number of coliform samples that we take per month. It's based on population that you serve and the closer approximation of a population. I think it's 1,000 people. If we're over 1,000, you have to take 2 per month. If it's under 1,000, it's 1 per month. So now we are on the 2 per month schedule. Except
They want it daily for a while.
not the chloroform. They want the
They wanted the chlorine and
the
the chlorine.
chlorine.
Chlorine, okay.
Which we'll talk about when we get to the next item or the monthly water data. Let's see, yes, then chlorine, they also noted that our chlorine levels were very, very low. And as we all know, our chlorine levels were down near 0.01. That was a sample at the end of the line. They have looked, they're fairly backed up on the paperwork that they have and that they reviewed from Richmond. So a lot of this goes back pre the fluoride issue, which is when our chlorine was a lot lower. Since then, which is October, our chlorine levels have been increased by staff. So if you look at October through February data, that chlorine level is much more in alignment with where they want us to be. They've also provided further guidance on where they'd like us to be with chlorine for the next few months. Then we are going to be sampling at the end of the line to ensure that we hit those numbers and stay within the quality. And the last one is update Stephen Cote's contact information with the state. And I don't know if that's been done, but if it hasn't, I'm sure we're doing that.
And also tell them to stop spelling it
So-
CODY.
Oh, did they spell it the wrong way?
I spelled, yeah, there's a long letter that had CODY every
So
time.
they need your contact information so that they know that you're a person to reach out to for contacting the state and you weren't on their list. So we'll
Got my
update that.
license over to the.
Yeah, I think it's a separate list if they,
Okay.
yeah, so we'll,
Alright.
I'll double check to make sure we.
I didn't
have
know that
that.
was on there.
Okay, it's in the letter. We can talk about it.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll double check on that.
We know where you are.
Well, but the state needs to know. Or Steve is too.
Any questions for Josh? Okay,
All right.
are we ready to talk budget?
As always.
Bart?
David, we're, by my count, about 25 minutes behind.
Yeah.
And this is a 20-minute item or 15-minute item. One of the things we might do is postpone the budget, because the budget, it might be informed by other things. It's just, there's a lot in the budget. So, I mean, my general bias would be to have a longer period of time than 15 minutes on a budget item, but defer to the rest of the folks.
Sounds good. Maybe push it to the top of the next meeting,
I'm okay with that. I have no objection.
knowing that we have enough money in our till to cover things that are getting fixed
This week.
this week.
Kara?
Just a question on if you're kicking 3E2, the assets, the liquid assets to the next budget discussion as well. I just had one question for you on the septage page to see if there was an error on that page, and it's page number 2, where it has your total revenues, then your expenses, and then a total. Were you adding your revenue plus your expenses to get your total? Why are you not subtracting, taking your revenue less your expenses to get your total?
Josh is pulling that up and hopefully we'll get an answer for you.
Now that
Page.
you mention it.
It's kind of looking pretty good when you add it all together instead of subtract it.
It's new math.
It's what they're
Hey.
teaching the kids in school.
Karen, is it this column
Yeah.
here?
You see total, you see the revenue at top is at 483,557 in FY22. And then you have your subtotal of expenses at 279,702. Isn't it supposed to be 43 less 279, not plus 279?
Connie, that looks like there is an error there, unless there's another explanation for that, those should be subtracted.
So then my question is how much of this whole,
Hold on a second, can we, I want to hear from Connie to make sure that we're not misinterpreting something.
I know, I'm trying to figure out why the total's on there, period, because they're really
I think it's like
two
total.
different things, but yeah, I would agree with that.
so then my question is how much are the other financial spreadsheets that have been prepared that we've got to go through to analyze to make sure they're what is being reported? Can you have some kind of notes like on the page 1 where it says checking due to from on your water fund, but it has a negative? Can you put just some comments and notes to say where that's going or what that is, or just some details like that, so that when we're trying to look at these numbers to confirm the accuracy of them, we understand what's going on?
Yeah, I had the same exact question, Kara.
Art?
Just a comment, since presumably this comes from Excel and then goes to PDF, is that right? Maybe we'd share the live Excel version, which would give us cell references where you can actually see what happened.
Yeah.
Assuming that we aren't hard coding pluses and minuses and things like that.
Okay.
That'd be great. So we could download the Excel is what you're saying, and we could check out the math ourselves and see what it's doing. Is that what you're saying, Bart?
It is.
Okay, thank you. But even those notes, just to understanding, because sometimes Connie says this is the way it's done because of this, and then it goes here. So that explanation that she gives would be helpful as well, and just like comments on different things.
So I'm good with giving some vague explanations, but to go deeper than that, Jay, as you saw, thank you for that, Jay. As I don't think it's funny. As I sent you the email today, you can see how it's a lot more in depth than just one sentence to explain.
Well,
That's why I think it would be good to have the Excel sheet here so we could see the data going in, how it's computed and what comes out.
Well,
I think
yeah, I have no issue with that, David, and it's gotta be a formula error that didn't carry across or what. But
Yeah.
as far as getting into explaining the liquid assets and going in depth, I can put a little note next to it, but to put a lot of note next to it, it's not easily explained with a couple of words.
Yeah,
Here's
that's why I think the
here's what,
Excel
David,
spreadsheet would be helpful.
David, my point to that is if somebody who potentially understands these financials enough to say, your revenue less your expenses has been added together, then having an understanding of what's being presented to you as a board, and if you want community input and a community understanding, they have to understand what's being presented to be able to see if there's any errors in what's being presented, as well as to make recommendations for what we think you should be doing. So I'm not trying to say, but if I don't understand it, I don't know how you all understand it.
Yeah.
Well,
But you're not doing the job. It's like, I'm here to ask a question of and say, here's the answer. And yes, apparently I made a mistake on an Excel spreadsheet, but I'm not here to train you on municipal accounting.
So I think we can provide a sheet that will give the basic idea and understanding of what the liquid net asset sheet is. That is possible to explain those lines. And then if
Thank
there's
you.
if there's further questions on that, we can dive into those questions because
Yeah.
there's a lot to explain there. But I think a general explanation of what each individual line is well within our ability to provide.
Yeah, Heidi?
Exactly. I was just gonna say, a general understanding for the general public is the more that information that is out there, the less questions come forward. And it just makes it easier for the whole community to be able to see exactly what you're talking about.
Jay?
right. And for what it's worth, me smacking my forehead was mostly around, I can stare at these things sometimes for an hour, and because I don't have an accounting background, I invariably make the exact wrong assumption. And I then have to bother Josh. So sometimes you got idiot-proof things, and I'm the idiot.
Okay, so we're gonna move the discussion of the fiscal year 24 water and wastewater budgets to the next meeting, and we expect to have live Excel spreadsheets showing data going in, data coming out.
Bart, David, maybe more than 15 minutes, give it like 30 or 45, even if we have to start early.
Like 5 o'clock. Who's bringing dinner next time?
3:30.
Okay, are we ready to move on to review of the monthly water data?
Yes.
Okay, let's review the monthly water data. So Josh touched on this a little bit a minute ago.
Let me share my screen. There's quite a bit of information to review here. Because things have changed a little bit since we last reviewed the water data, as we touched on with sanitary survey letter. So go to my notes to make sure that we do incorporate all the information. So you'll see, I guess the first thing to note is on here, you'll see that there's sort of this horizontal line right after February 14th. So that represents the change in sampling locations for fluoride level, which is this section here. Finished pH out, this section here, and temperature. These three had all been being sampled at the wastewater plant at the tap. So essentially an end of line sample. The state asked us or directed us to change the sample location. So on February 15th, we started sampling those at the water house. So this isn't raw water out of the ground. The water comes out of the ground, gets treated with chlorine and fluoride, goes through a contact time. Then it gets sampled at that point before it enters into the main drinking water system. And that data then allows us to understand what is the chemical makeup of the water as it enters into the drinking system. So if it's too high or too low, the operators can then say immediately, all right, we got to change something right now, rather than waiting for it to travel through the line to the end of the line and get that sample. The first chlorine free, that was, let me make sure that one I got a little Let me make sure I follow out because that one got a bit, hold on one second, Steve. I know you want to jump in, but
Well,
that first chlorine contact, I think we had been taking. Yep, we have been taking that at the water house
Right.
but we slightly changed it.
no. The before the 14th and our sanitary survey was done. We were always taking our samples from the treatment plant, which was they consider end of line. We had, before that date, we were already monitoring our water at the water house. Because you need to monitor what you're at the source of treatment. We were already doing that, but it was not the numbers that were getting transferred to the state. So when the state guy came in and he said, look, you need to, the numbers we're looking for from the state are, we're looking for the numbers post-treatment, pre-distribution. And you had put into your service line a service sample port years ago, was never being used. And that's where we had already started before the state came in. And when the state guy came in, he's like, those are the numbers we want. And the reasoning being, you want it before it gets to Gary Brasser's house. Not to find out it got to Gary's house and the numbers are all out of whack. So that's why you're gonna see higher numbers, because chlorine has to be higher when you go into the system to get a residual at the end of the line. The other thing the state guy explained to us was the numbers that we were seeing at the end of the line by state standards are not acceptable. They're too low.
Okay.
He really believes going into our system that he would like to see I believe he told you a 0.8 to a 1.2.
Or just at a 0.8 for the next few months to see where the end of the line system then ends up.
So that's what we were already in the 0.6 to 0.7 range, because we had already moved our numbers up a little bit to start with, but we're now trying to maintain the 0.8 going into the system.
And that's sorry.
Total chlorine or free?
The state only cares about free chlorine. We monitor total chlorine, and we have a spreadsheet that's a little different than this, that we put total going in and total going out. We also monitor the chlorine as it comes out of our clear well before it goes into the contact chamber. You have about 1,400 feet of pipe that snakes around in there. And that's the contact chamber. It takes roughly, so when the pump's running and pumping into the system, it is roughly almost an hour before water that you pump out of the ground gets into the distribution system. And it needs that time to have the chlorine react. We monitor it as it goes into as the chlorine comes out of the clear well and goes into that contact chamber. So we have a rough idea. We're sure we're putting enough in there. But at the end of the contact chamber, we're also monitoring it. And that is pre-distribution. So we know exactly what's going into the distribution system.
Post-treatment, pre-distribution.
Correct. And that's exactly what the Matt from the state told us he wanted. We took him over to the water house and showed him what we had done, and he was on board with it.
And that ties back, Jay, to what you were saying, that the letter from the state talks about taking the sample at the end of the line, I think until the end of June.
Right.
And that's because he wants to see if we get up to
He wants to see if
0.8,
it's working.
where does it go? And then once he's satisfied with and we can adjust that down a little bit based on if the sample at the end of the line is where we want it to be, or it can go down. We can get that chlorine to a better location where it's working, but not overly chlorinating. But But as a general rule, the state does not, unless in this instance, require the end of line sample.
Right.
So what we're gonna do on this sheet going forward is work with the state to say exactly what numbers are you requiring us to report. Reconfigure this sheet so that we're giving them exactly what they want, but then keeping a second sheet because the data we have been getting can be helpful to
Yeah.
know what's at the end of the line. And we'll probably continue to take those samples so that staff knows what's happening and we can continue to report to the commission. But
Yeah.
the state isn't necessarily monitoring that on a daily basis.
Another thing I'm not is a chemist. But I thought it was kind of odd that they wouldn't want to see how much chlorine was present at the end, but I guess the canary in the coal mine they're using is how the E. coli is. They don't care if the chlorine is, as long as the E. coli is at the right level.
Well-
That's for good.
Well, the way they feel is if you're putting they base it on the number of gallons of water that we're processing a day. That if you're putting in X amount at 0.8, no matter what happens, you're covered at every end of the line you have. And that, I mean, it's general, but that was the way it was explained to me. They don't really care what it is actual at the end of the line. They just feel, or they know from research, that if you put in water at this number, you're going to be maintaining this number at the end of your line. And it shows that we are. I mean, your water system is pretty tight.
And those numbers went up starting in October when you increased the chlorine.
Yeah,
to the end, right?
almost.
You can see those numbers. If you look at September to October data,
Yeah,
it's up.
we have changed. And when I say we, the staff has changed. Just the fluoride in the chlorination process. 100%. The way it was being done was almost impossible for us to maintain the numbers that you guys wanted. Or the state wanted. Fluoride is now actually mixed about every 2 weeks manually. And if you look at our numbers, they've been pretty rock solid, right in the ballpark if you guys want. The chlorine we have now gotten. It used to be they were using 1 gallon of chlorine. It was old school. And when I say old school, it was old school. So they were dumping 1 gallon in of 15% chlorine and mixing it with water to a certain percentage. And then that's what got pumped into your system.
So those DPD 1 and DPD 4s that we just paid for, those will help us more accurately measure that. So it's on one of the water and sewer
Chlorine
purchase
meters.
orders.
The chlorine meters.
Yeah. We ordered 1,000 of free chlorine and 1,000.
No, those are just yes, those are I could show you those. Those are just the little packages that we use to test the chlorine.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But they're more accurate than what we had been doing, or?
No, they're no more accurate.
Oh, okay.
It's just
But the
It's
procedures.
just how we test them, we need them.
Okay. Well, I mean, they
I
didn't
will
cost
tell
much
you-
anyway.
When I told you earlier that Phil could tell us everything, I could not believe it. He looks on his phone, he pulls up the water system for Newport, and he has up-to-date, accurate information on chlorine content and fluoride right on his phone, instantaneous.
So it's measuring the injection.
Yeah.
That would be nice to have.
I mean, that's one of those, it's expensive, but I mean, that's one of those things that is possible. And he's like, I just print off a graph and give it to the,
But until we do that, if
But,
it's
yeah.
50 below 0, you're still going up to the water house and opening the measuring port.
yeah, we are now using straight chlorine. There's no more diluting it.
Mhm.
And one thing that does is it turns the pump down that's monitoring it into the system. It was running at almost full capacity. Now it runs at its lowest settings.
Hmm.
So it's a $1,300 pump that you're now tripling its lifespan.
Terrific.
So there are different things going on in the water house, but we're doing them for what the state wants. Really, and the justification is they want it post-treatment, free distribution. And they have a set number that they feel will give you adequate coverage at the end. And our numbers show that.
Thank you. Okay. Update on the Chittenden Solid Waste District Biosolids Agreement.
I went to that meeting.
You went to the meeting. I could tee it up, or if you want to jump into it.
There were, CSWD held a meeting with various operators, and anybody else who wanted to go. And there's nothing I like better than talking about sludge. I mean, so I went, and if you want to pull up the rate schedule that they're expecting. But the other operators on the call were like, they thought the rate increase was very reasonable and that it could have been a lot worse. And Steve Tyler, what's his name, Tyler, from the state?
Josh Tyler.
Josh Tyler, I said at the end of the call, all I need from each plant is basically an email saying we accept the rates. But the proposed rates, notice Burlington has to pay the highest. When we say the grasslands, do y'all know what he means, what this means by the grasslands?
Over in New York.
Yeah, there's this plant that Casella has called the grasslands plant. That's much more eco-friendly. They treat the stuff, they basically process it into fertilizer, if I recall. And that's what pretty much everybody is going to be doing, the 114 there. So.
Yeah, so it's about a 5% annual increase, because this is fixed rates for 5 years.
I think they have, right, with a CPI option to increase every year.
Oh. So yeah, it goes up 25% from current rate to proposed rate, and then they have a CPI adjusted.
But for right now, this is, since Canada is the other option, and Canada could at any time just say, we're cutting you off because of all the PFAs in it. This is, we don't have another option.
Yeah, and that would, the letter from the official at the state said, this is probably our best bet.
So from this, we know they're gonna go up. Do we need to let everybody in the town know that rates are gonna go up, or is it?
I think it's part of the budget
This
discussion.
goes into the budget and then the budget is approved in advance of next year.
Right.
So that's all the budget. That's what we sort of tabled. That's the
Yeah.
first work to get to the budget that then drives the rate.
But this would certainly figure into that equation.
Mhm.
So that's a question specific to this cost, though. Was that factored into the budget?
Yeah, so when I looked at this line in the budget, this one wouldn't kick into February 24. There'll be a CPI increase, so I tried to look at our average tonnage, look at what the price would be roughly between July 1st through February, and then where we'd be in February to come up with an estimate on where we should be in the budget. So tried to forecast and estimate as best we could with the information that we have, and to put what I think is as accurate numbers I could come up with.
Are we able to keep sending stuff to Canada?
So
Move to this if we have to, or do we have to lock in with these guys starting?
That was my understanding.
yeah, because we I think CSWD essentially contracts with one hauler, which has been Casella, or they could switch it to Canadian hauler. But if they switch it for a lower price and then Canada shuts its border.
Or if
then
they're-
we're-
Everybody on the call was like, Canada's not gonna keep taking this.
It sounds like.
There's just no way.
Yeah.
The PFA levels in American stuff just are way beyond what they're willing to take.
Kara?
What's our current sludge rate right now that we're paying to go to Canada?
We don't go to Canada. We are 100% with Casella through CSWD. The option of Canada came up when CSWD contemplated going out to RFP for this service. And when they looked at other providers that were out there, there was one company in Canada that was a valid other provider. That was it. And then as they looked more into the politics of it, it looked like that was not going to be so valid if the border shuts down.
That's what I thought. I didn't think we were with Canada, but the way discussion was right now, I was confused. So which is our current rate of these?
So
It'd be
right-
87.
Yeah, the 87.97, and I looked at our billing, we do most of it to grasslands. I think we had one one container full that went to the landfill. And then also note, there is a management fee and a trucking fee that is added on to this. I think CSWD has a management fee and then a trucking fee. So when you look at the actual bill, it's like, why, we were closer to $96. And when I reached out to Josh at CSWD, he told me that those fees are added on. So I've included that in my estimate for the budget as well.
Can I ask one more question on this? Is, because I'm trying to understand sludge versus biosolids disposal and biosolids chemicals, is that different things?
So
Or is this
so
biosolids?
So this is what, like, when the solids that are left over after the process is all the way. This is what's all the way. The biochemical.
This is actually a
polymer that's used.
it's a biosolid.
Yeah.
It's
Okay.
been dewatered. Sludge is actually not dewatered. Technically, what we produce is a cake, or they group it in sludge, but it's been dewatered down and is actually a.
So the reason I'm asking this question is I'm trying to compare it to the financials that are going to come on that spreadsheet that was wrong. List the expenses for septage. And I'm trying to figure out if this sludge expense is at all on the septage expense, or if they're two different things. So that's for next meeting, but that's where I'm trying to put the two together, because this part of the budget for the whole plant versus.
The only correlation between septage and the sludge, the more septage you take in, the more biosolids you're producing.
Correct.
The more the system feeds in, the more, like, they're both.
Well,
gonna raise that
what
level.
Richmond feeds in is pretty much standard. That that doesn't change a lot for us.
Mhm.
It's what we put in for septage that changes.
Yeah.
One tiny bit of
And I-
minutia. Go ahead.
Well, the difference with it, the difference is that if you're on pure waste sludge, you actually get a much wetter product. So when you pay your wet tons, you pay more. When you're at the septage, you make it drier so you can get more in it. So you can actually weigh less on your loads.
That goes into how much we use to actually make it pay for our system.
Thank you.
One other just little bit of minutia that Jeff Ford might find interesting. One thing that was mentioned during the meeting with CSWD and the various plant operators was that Vermont Natural Gas is going to take a stab at starting up a gasification program.
Sure.
This has been tried before and it's always blown up, not literally.
Bad use.
But it's an interesting idea. It has been done and has worked in other states. So it'll be interesting to follow.
I'll tell you, the PFAS issue is gonna be front and center on all this.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
it is worrying a lot of it. It's one of the biggest things we talk about when we go to meetings and stuff
Mhm.
for operators. Because if they really decide not, you're screwed, because you're not gonna be able to get rid of your solids.
Right.
Almost have it forever.
So I think in New Hampshire, they have a couple of it, or they did have an incinerator that was in process and was burning it, but it has to burn really hot to get rid of the PFAS.
Right. They don't break
chemicals.
down.
Bart?
Does septage arrive with PFAS in it?
Oh, everything does,
Probably.
everything. If you just
Disproportionately, so knowing some of the sources of PFAS, is it possible that we are disproportionately impacted in our PFAS levels by septic? That's kind of the point.
possibly you're increasing your levels, but I wouldn't know exactly, how much. There was just a study done by, I believe, the University of Florida, out of 24 of the known toilet paper manufacturers out there, 23 of them contained PFAS in the toilet paper. That just gives you an example of it's in everything.
Out of curiosity, which one didn't?
They did not say. And I think they just, but it was just, that was just released on the news the other night. I happened to see it. And it was dumbfounding.
As I recall in the class I took, the state did some studying, trying to taking samples, they found higher PFAS levels, I believe, from the residential wastewater than they did from the industrial. Which is interesting.
So, yeah, they were doing a study in Essex. And they went around and took samples out of the sewer systems in industrial areas. And then they went to residential areas. It was higher, PFAS chemicals were higher in some of the residential areas than they were in the industrial areas at this point. It's in every product out there right now. I mean, it's really, and it's been accepted as a chemical that is okay. I mean, but it really now is coming to the forefront that it's not.
Okay.
But it is something that we in the industry are very concerned about, and there's not an answer yet. Just be thankful that it's not in the water system.
Linda?
Just for us that don't know what PFAS is.
It's, don't ask me to say that there's 5 chemicals. Basically, they're forever chemicals.
They don't naturally break down in the environment, so once they're out there, they're out there. The problem is when you ingest them, they stay within your organ tissue, they don't go away.
Right.
So it's a cumulative effect, you know, if you use this brand of toilet paper once, it probably won't make any difference, but the body has no way of breaking it down, so it accumulates and it accumulates indefinitely.
And
it has been linked to a lot of various types of cancers, birth defects, infertility. You know, there's a lot there to read about.
Communism.
Polyfluoroalkyl.
Yeah, there you go. There's 29 of them, only 5 of them are really concerned for the EPA.
A lot of major distribution. It was in firefighting foam for a long time. So near airports, it found its way into the groundwater. Mary?
Yes, I'll be, I'll be growing a lot of large leaf vegetation this year, if anybody would like to get.
Thank you, Mary.
Organic.
Are we ready for the approval of minutes, warrants, and purchase orders?
Yes.
Heck, yeah.
Okay. I guess I'll start for a motion to approve the draft minutes of the March 13th meeting.
Move to approve the draft minutes of the March 13 meeting.
Thank you, Jay. We have a second. Thank you, Morgan. Motion made by Jay, seconded by Morgan. Does anybody want to offer suggestions for
I already
edits?
sent mine in. Morgan took them.
Okay,
Suggestions for what?
edits to the minutes.
I didn't see any.
Okay, so the motion is to approve the minutes as drafted for the March 13th meeting. Calling for a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bard, I.
And David, I. Moving on to warrants and purchase orders. Let's start with the warrants.
No POs.
Yeah, I didn't think there were.
I move to accept the warrants as presented.
Bard, I will second that.
Okay, so motion made by Jay to approve the warrants as presented, seconded by Bard. Any further discussion? Hearing none, calling the motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bard, I.
And this is David. Aye. Items for next agenda, septage rates
Budget.
and budget. And we will be looking at live Excel spreadsheets versus snapshots.
An
Anything else?
update on pumps and other repairs.
Update on the influent pumps and the list of things to be repaired at the treatment plant.
You want to start at 5?
I think we should.
I think. we should
Yes,
do.
probably.
Might be standard for the rest of
Yeah, I think-
2023, right?
And we'll try to bring food that's a little more finger food maybe next time.
Yeah. So,
All right.
absent any other business to bring before this commission, I would accept the motions for adjournment.
I make the motion to adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, Morgan.
Bard, I will second that.
Thank you, Bard. Motion made by Morgan, seconded by Bard. Not seeing any further discussion, calling the motion to a vote. Please identify yourself and signify your vote.
Jay, I.
Morgan, I.
Aaron, I.
Bard, I.
And this is David. Aye, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody, and thank you for the food.